Shalom, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to the channel. This message has been recorded on the 2nd of May 2024 in the Gregorian year, and we have just completed the Passover and unleavened bread season. I hope you had an edifying experience and an experience full of revelation. And I wanted to do this video for a couple of weeks now, but decided to wait until the aftermath of the Passover season, and then we can discuss some of the things that need to be discussed. And I know many people are concerned or maybe slightly demotivated at the fact that the gathering that many people, myself included, were expecting in 2024 hasn't happened, and we still remain in our places of captivity. But I want to offer you some encouragement today to talk about some things that may show us where we are on the timeline, and also that may show us that we are still in the season for the gathering. Now, I've always believed that 2024 is the time that we will see our captivity ended, and also believed that that would be from the Passover season onwards, or starting from the Passover season. And I'm going to go through quite a few things to kind of explain where we are, and also build some foundation for some things that we might need to understand that perhaps is not fully understood within the body. Now, there are some people, I've had a couple of questions asking me about the second Passover. Now, for those of you who don't understand or don't know about the second Passover, I think you can find it in Numbers chapter 9 and also 2 Chronicles chapter 30, where it talks about a second Passover for those who were unclean and were not able to keep the first Passover. I think it's for those who are unclean by touching a dead body, and also those who were on a journey and in a place where they couldn't keep the Passover. So many people are thinking, well, is the second Passover going to be the time of the gathering? Now, we must never put the Most High in the box, because he can do all things. And so I wouldn't dismiss this notion, but perhaps there are more things that we need to understand so that we can see what the timeline is saying. And I believe that hopefully by the end of this video, we will have some more hope and encouragement about the process that we are in. So there's quite a few bits to get to. And as I say, I need to build up some foundation so we can understand certain things in terms of the timeline and the way how the Most High operates when it comes to the various seasons that we're going to see. So I'm going to jump straight into the video so we can see some of these things in the scriptures. So let's get into this presentation and look at some of the questions that we are going to answer throughout. One of them being, what and when is a jubilee year? Now, many people through various calculations and things that have been in history have worked out that 2024 is a jubilee year. And according to scripture, we will need it to be a jubilee year for the gathering to take place. And so we will see some more things that will give us understanding about what and when a jubilee year is. When does the biblical year begin? A disclaimer, it might not be when you think. So many people have the understanding of a biblical year starting in the month of April or in the Passover season. And that would be the first month of the year, and then the year will go on accordingly. Now, that may be true to a degree, but there's some more understanding we need to get so we know the start of the biblical year. And this presentation will give you that understanding. And like I say, it might not be what you currently think, but we'll go through that as we proceed. Is the second Exodus really a two-part process? And if so, when do both parts take place? Now, this is something that I've spoken about before, that the gathering is not something that happens overnight. There is a process that must take place, and we're going to study that and see that in more detail. And that's why I encourage you to hold on and watch out for the things coming, because it is not all over, as I said at the beginning. Is the Most High calling you to part one of the process? This is an important area that we need to understand and discuss so we can see what the requirements are for part one of the two-part process for the gathering or the second Exodus. And what happens during and then after the second Exodus into the wilderness. Again, we'll have a brief understanding of the things that we should be expecting if this is the year of the gathering. And as I say, I still believe 2024 is that year. And then we will have some miscellaneous things to very briefly go over before the presentation ends. So let's get into the first question, which is what and when is a Jubilee year? Now, what I'm going to do is to play you a clip of a video I recorded about 2 years ago, which talks about the Jubilee year and gives you some explanation as to how that works. It's a short clip, so I'll play it now, and then obviously we'll be back after the clip. Now, first and foremost, let's look at what is classed as a week of years, or a Shemitah or sabbatical cycle. Now, a week of years is simply like a 7-day week, but each day represents a year. This is known as a Shemitah cycle, or as I say, a sabbatical cycle. It consists of 6 years, and the 7th year being the sabbatical year. Now, this is just like the Sabbath command, which is 6 days you shall labor, and on the 7th day is a Sabbath unto Yah. Therein you shall do no work. You find that in Leviticus 23 and 3. Now, a Jubilee consists of 7 Shemitah cycles, or 7 sabbatical years, 7 times. So 7 times 7 is 49 years. Then on the beginning of the following year, that is the beginning of the 50th year, starts the Jubilee year. And the end of that current year will end the Jubilee year. It is a very similar count to Shavuot, known as the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost. And you can see Leviticus 23 verses 15 and 16 regarding that. So the Jubilee year is a 49-year cycle, as I've mentioned, of 7 Shemitah cycles. 7 times 7 is 49. And the 50th year, or the beginning of the 50th year, starts the Jubilee. Now, in addition to that, the 50th year is also the first year of the new Jubilee cycle. So you have 49 years making the 7 Shemitah cycles 7 times. Then you have the 50th year, which is classed as the Jubilee year. And the 50th year is also the first year in the new Jubilee cycle. And I'll use some diagrams to demonstrate this as we go through. To clarify, 49 years and 1 day begins the 50th year, which, as I say, is the Jubilee for that year and is also the first day of the new Jubilee. Now, the reason why I say 49 years and 1 day starts the 50th year is because think of it like your birthday. Now, if somebody was born on the 1st of January 1982, then that means on the 1st of January 2022, that person would be exactly 40 years of age. Now, on the 2nd of January 2022, that person would still be 40 years of age plus 1 day. So they would still be 40 years old, but they would now be into their 41st year. They can no longer be in their 40th year because they're past the year 40. It's now 40 years and 1 day. So on the 2nd of January, that person is now classed as being in their 41st year. So the same thing with the Jubilee cycle. After 49 years exactly and 1 day, you are now into your 50th year of the Jubilee cycle. And that is also the first year of the new Jubilee. So we have seen the clip explaining the Shemitah and Jubilee cycles. And now I want us to read the scriptures in relation to those, which we find in the following verses, starting in Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 through to 4. And Yah spake unto Moshe in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then ye shall the land keep a Shabbat unto Yah. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Shabbat of rest unto the land, a Shabbat for Yah. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. So this backs up what we saw in the clip of the 7-year cycle. 6 years of work, 1 year of rest, similar to the weekly cycle and the Shabbat day of rest on the 7th day. And for the Jubilee, we read the same scripture in Leviticus chapter 25, starting in verse 8. And thou shalt number 7 Shabbats of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Shabbats of years shall be unto thee 49 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement, shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of it in itself, nor gather the grapes in it, or the vine undressed. For it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this Jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession. So we see the scriptures here in relation to the Shemitah cycle or sabbatical cycle or cyclical cycle and the Jubilee being in the 50th year. And we note some of the terms in there talking about every man being returned unto his possession, and that liberty should be proclaimed throughout the land, and also every man unto his family. Every man should be returned unto his family. So this is the year of freedom. A Jubilee year is a year of freedom, a year of liberty, a year when the rightful owners of possessions and the rightful families of each man should be restored. And so this is why I believe that it has to be a Jubilee year for us to be free, for us to be released out of captivity. And as I stated at the beginning, there are many signs that indicate that 2024 is a Jubilee year. But let's get some more understanding about what that means and how that works. When does the biblical year begin? As I said in the disclaimer, it might not be when you think. So this is what we have to understand now. How does a biblical year work? And if we get that understanding, we will see a window of opportunity and a window of hope with regards to the gathering. So when does the year start? Let's look at some scriptures. In the 5th and 20th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after that the city was smitten, in the selfsame day, the hand of Yah was upon me and brought me thither. This is found in Ezekiel chapter 40 and verse 1, and is a very important scripture because it gives us some information we may not otherwise understand. That it says in the 25th year of their captivity, which was at the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month. Now, as we read this, we should start already thinking that how can the year begin on the 10th day of the month? We always had the understanding that the year begins on the first day of the first biblical month. But here it is saying that at the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, so the 10th day of the month is the beginning of the year according to Ezekiel 40:1. So let's get some more understanding as to how this can be the case. Now, if you go through Ezekiel's chapter 40 through to 45, you will see some specific additional instructions given for the feast in a Jubilee year. And the feasts are listed in order after the Day of Atonement. So if we consider the Day of Atonement to be the feast that is on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, we are going to see some instructions that are listed in order of the feast after the Day of Atonement. So after the Day of Atonement, we have the Feast of Tabernacles, then we have the 8th day, and then we go through all the way to Passover, some 6 months later, and unleavened bread in the first biblical month. And this proves that Ezekiel 40:1 was in a Jubilee year. And a Jubilee year, as we have already seen, starts on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month. So as we look at those scriptures, we are seeing a pattern here with regards to the 7th month and the 10th day being the Day of Atonement, and also being the start of the year if we are in a Jubilee year. And so now we have that understanding from scripture is going to paint a picture that will tie in with the timeline that we're looking at, which will give us the understanding of where we are on that timeline. And remember, all of these things, when we talk about the gathering possibly being in 24, all rely on 2024 being a Jubilee year. Because if it's a Jubilee year, then things will operate slightly different from the other previous years, or the other 49 years, because the 49-year cycle, as we've seen, leads into the 50th year, which starts the Jubilee. So let's look at some more things so we can understand how this timeline works in terms of the feast season and what the Most High is doing. Now, we've already read this in Leviticus 25 verses 9 and 10, but I bring it back to our remembrance because I want to highlight some key points. That we must, in the Jubilee, sound that trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. So that is the date that the Jubilee starts, on the Day of Atonement. And we should, in this 50th year, sanctify it, hallow it, and proclaim liberty. Liberty is another word for freedom. Throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a Jubilee, and every man should be returned unto his possession, and every man should be returned unto his family. That indicates freedom. That indicates that the instruction given is that liberty must be proclaimed throughout the land. So if we consider a gathering and a exodus into the wilderness, which is when the Most High is going to free his people, then according to this scripture, it would have to be at the start of the Jubilee. It can't be in the middle. It can't be at the end. It has to be at the start of the Jubilee, on the first day of the Jubilee, which we have seen would fall on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month. So let's continue looking at some things. Leviticus 23 and 24. Speak unto the children of Yasharal, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. Now here it is telling us that on the 7th month, in the first day, will be a memorial, the blowing of trumpets, and a holy gathering. So now we are talking about the Feast of Trumpets, because we know the Feast of Trumpets starts on the first day of the 7th month. And I put this scripture up also because this feast is also a very important feast when it comes to determine the year. And incidentally, this is the only feast day that starts on the first day of the month. If you consider all the other feasts, for example, the Passover season we know starts on the 14th day of the first biblical month. The unleavened bread starts on the 15th day of the first biblical month. And then we know that the Day of Atonement also starts on the 10th of a month. And then we know that the Feast of Tabernacles starts on the 15th of the month for a 7-day period. And then the 8th day, the last great day, starts on or is a 1-day feast, and that would be on the 22nd day of the first biblical month, the day after the Feast of Tabernacles finished. So all of these feast days that I've just covered all start on various dates of the month, and it is only the Feast of Trumpets that starts on the first day of the 7th biblical month. So let's understand why that is, because that will give us the answer to the question we are looking at about when does the biblical year begin. Now, we all know this scripture in Exodus chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, where it says, "And Yah spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." So we know this scripture is in relation to the Passover and first Exodus of the children of Yasharal. And it tells us that this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So we know that this is in the Passover season, which falls in the first biblical month, which in our Gregorian system would equate to April. That is the season we have just passed. So we need to get some understanding, because it is saying that Passover is in the first month of the year. And it is also saying, and it's been highlighted here, that this month, i.e. the first month, shall be the beginning of months. Now, I've underlined that terminology, beginning of months, because it should give us a clue if we look at what this scripture is saying. Because the Most High could have easily said, "And Yah spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the first month of the year." He could have left out the term beginning of months, because as we know in the Gregorian system, when the year begins on the 1st of January, the month begins, the first month of the year, and the year begins. So why did the Most High add the beginning of months? He didn't need to say the beginning of months if he was saying that that first month of the year is when the year starts. But that's not what he was saying, and we're going to see why that is as we go through. Now let's see our clue for when our year starts, according to biblical understanding. Now, Rosh Hashanah, one of the terms that is used, also means the head or the top or the beginning or the start of the year. And this is also known as Yom Torah, or the Feast of Trumpets. Now, as already explained and mentioned, the Feast of Trumpets is the only feast day to start on the first day of the 7th biblical month. So that is the clue that is when the cyclical year starts. And this is why I say we need to get understanding of these things, because many people believe that the year starts during the Passover season. We have already read that the Most High said that this will be the beginning of months unto you. It will be the first month of the year. So if the first month of the year starts during the Passover season, how can the cyclical year start on the first day of the 7th biblical month? Basically a 6-month difference between Passover and the Feast of Trumpets. But as I said, the clue is that the Feast of Trumpets is the only feast day to start on the first day of the month, in this case, the 7th month. So we have a contradiction, so to speak, unless we get the understanding that is in the biblical terminology, and that will then answer the question we are looking to answer. Now, the only exception to the year starting on the first day of the 7th biblical month, if we're following along, we should have already seen that it is a jubilee year. It is only the jubilee year, i.e. the 50th year, where the year starts 10 days later from the Feast of Trumpets, i.e. on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, also known as Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. Now, we've read the scriptures clarifying that in Leviticus 25 verses 9 through to 10, and also Ezekiel 40 and 1, where it says that on the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, which we can now see is in the 7th month, or the 7th biblical month, known as the Day of Atonement. So, as I say, there's a 6-month difference between the Passover season and the Day of Atonement season, or the Feast of Trumpets season. It's a 6 months, roughly 6 months, give or take. So how can the start of the year be on both of those times when there's a 6-month gap? Let's get some more understanding. And the understanding is this, that the years change from one year to the next on the 7th biblical month. And the months start or reset for counting. The beginning of months, that term that we saw in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, the months start for counting purposes from the first month of that same year, 14 days before Passover, i.e. on the first day of the first biblical month, what some refer to as Nisan 1. So it can sound a bit confusing because it's saying two things, that the year, the number of years that have completed from creation, that year starts on the 7th biblical month. But the counting of months start on the first day of the first biblical month. As I say, confusing it sounds like, but we know that the Most High is not the author of confusion. And this is why we need to get the understanding to see how both of those things can be correct. We've read this already. Exodus 12 verses 1 to 2. And Yah spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. And as I said previously, there is a reason why the Most High added that phrase in the beginning of months. Because if we were going on the Gregorian system, we wouldn't need to say the beginning of months. The Gregorian system starts on the first day of the year. So if I said to you, what is the first day of the year in the Gregorian system? You would say to me, it is the 1st of January. You wouldn't need to say it is the beginning of months on the 1st of January, or you would say it's the 1st of January, because we know in the Gregorian system, the 1st of January is the beginning of the year and the first day of the month. But this is why we need to do what it says in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, that we have to be conformed, not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our mind, so we can prove what is the good and the acceptable and the perfect will of Yah. Because the things of this world, the things that this world has established, are always going to be contrary to the Most High system. So where we see this theme that the 1st of January starts the year, i.e. the first day of the first month, changes the year, this is something we've all been accustomed to, and we see it that it's simple to understand because it's the first of the first. But in the Most High system, it doesn't operate that way. And it may seem like the world system is more easy to understand than the Most High system. But the only reason for that is because we have been ingrained through captivity to learn the ways of the Babylonians. If we were brought up on the Most High's calendar and on the Most High's ways, we would see the 1st of January being a contrary thing to what we understand, because we would know when the months start, but we would also know when the years start, and we would know that they're not the same. So we go back to Deuteronomy 28 and all the things that the Most High said would happen if we didn't hearken unto him. That has happened. We go to Daniel chapter 12, where it talks about times and seasons being changed and laws and all these things that we see today. And that's why now, because they have been changed, we have no understanding of what the Most High is really saying to us when it comes to the counting of the year. So I don't want you to be confused, or I don't want you to think this is confusing, because Yah is not the author of confusion. But if there is any confusion of understanding it, it's because we have to renew our minds and get rid of the Babylonian system for counting years and months and focus on the Most High system. And then that will tell us on the timeline how things are working out. So let's continue to look at some of these things. Point to note is that the first month of the year is not the beginning of the year. I'm going to say that again. The first month of the year is not the beginning of the year. Let's see why. The start of the biblical year is indicated by the number 7. Now we know that 7 is the number of completion and perfection. It's the Most High's number that is represented by completion and perfection. So I want you to consider things like the week that we go through. We have 6 days in the week, and then the 7th day is the Shabbat, the day of rest. And that is the completion and perfection of that week. It means the week cycle has been completed and perfected by finishing with a day of rest. Now think of unleavened bread, where it is a feast of 7 days. The first day is a holy convocation. The last day is a holy convocation. It starts and finishes. There's a beginning and end, and it is a 7 days. So again, it shows us that is the completion of perfection. Same thing with the Feast of Tabernacles, which is a 7-day feast. The first day is a holy convocation, and the 7th day ends that feast. Again, a beginning and an end. And even if we look at the 7,000 years allotted to mankind on this earth, that there are 6,000 years in this world until Messiah comes for his millennial reign, making the 7,000 years, and that will be for a period of 1,000. So 6,000 years plus 1,000 years is 7,000 years, the time allotted to mankind, a complete synchronization of the year from start to finish, or from beginning to end. So all of these things point to the number 7. And as we've already seen, that the Feast of Trumpets starts on the first day of the 7th month. Again, a beginning and an end. And that's why that the 7th month always begins the year, whether it be on the first day, the Feast of Trumpets in any normal year, or whether it be on the 10th day, the Day of Atonement, during a jubilee year. Now, if we consider a circle which starts at 0 degrees, when you go round the circle from 0 degrees all the way back to the same point, that circle becomes a 360-degree circle. But the starting point is 0 degrees, and the ending point is 360 degrees, and they both fall in the same place. So that means the completion of the circle has a beginning and an end at the same place. And that is what the number 7 represents, that it begins and ends, which we can see. In essence, the number 7 represents the beginning and the ending. And you see that in Revelation chapter 22, verse 13, when Messiah says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. It's that same theme that we have all throughout. So this is the reason why the actual biblical year starts in the 7th month, be it on the first day for the Feast of Trumpets, or on the 10th day during the Jubilee year on the Day of Atonement. So if we've got that understanding that the year starts, the biblical year that is starts on the 7th month, now we have to get the understanding that what does it mean when it says this month shall be the beginning of month for you, this month shall be the first month of the year, found in Exodus chapter 12 verse 2, which we know is the Passover season. How do we synchronize those two things to both be true? Let's look at some more detail. We need to understand the month and the year cycles. There is a month cycle which is different to the year cycle. And this will give us the understanding as to how both of those two scriptures can be correct. That the month starts in Exodus chapter 12 during the Passover season, but the year starts in the Feast of Trumpets or Day of Atonement in the 7th biblical month. This is the understanding that we are going to now get, so we can see how these things both correlate and are correct, and then we can apply it to the timeline that we're looking at with regards to the gathering. Now I've got a table here which I'm going to show you, and that table will show us the Hebraic year and the Gregorian year, and then we will see how the months work. Now, just as a disclaimer, the year that has been used on the Hebraic year is the year since creation. So when you see that year, it's the year since creation. And incidentally, I'm using this as an example. I'm not saying it is the correct year since creation, because that's something I believe only the Most High knows. But it could be the correct year according to understanding on how much time is on the timeline. So don't get hung up over the year. It's been used as an example, but it could actually be correct. So we'll see in this table that the green number starts the Hebraic year, the yellow number starts the Hebraic month, and the red number starts the Gregorian year and the Gregorian month. And we know that the Gregorian year and month both tie in because, as I said, the 1st of January is the first day of the first Gregorian month, and that changes the year to the next year. So let's look at this table so we can get some understanding of what we're looking at. So in October 2023, or the end of September, beginning of October, whenever it was, in the 7th month, the 7th biblical month now I'm talking about, that correlates to October 2023. And in that month, the year since creation, I remember what I said, I'm using this as an example, I'm not saying it is totally correct, but let's assume that the year of creation was the year 5899. So since creation, 5,899 years had passed. And that happened in the 7th biblical month. That's when the year changed from 5898 to 5899. But we will notice that the Hebraic month is not the first month, it is the 7th month, because the year starts on the 7th month, as we have already seen. And then we move to November 2023, where the Hebraic month becomes the 8th month. And December 23, the Hebraic month becomes the 9th month. December 2023, January now becomes 2024, because we know the Gregorian year and the month on the first month changes the year. But notice that when we get to the 10th Hebraic month, which equates to January, the year is still 5899. And so it continues, that February 2024 equated to the 11th month of the Hebraic year, but the year is still 5899. And same for the 12th month, which correlated to March 2024. So when we now get to April 2024, we see that the month now becomes the first month of that biblical year, 5899. But notice the year hasn't changed. The year still remains at 5899, even though the months has been reset. So the months are reset during the Passover season, which equates to April. But the actual year, 5899, hasn't changed. That remains the same and will continue all the way through May 2024, June 2024, July 2024, August 2024, September 2024. The months of the Hebraic months will be counted: the 2nd, the 3rd month, the 4th month, the 5th month, and the 6th month. So we see how their synchronization of the Hebraic month and the Hebraic year works, whereas the Gregorian month, we know how that works. And then when we get to the 7th month, the 7th biblical month, which equates to October 2024, we see that that is the year that the Hebraic year changes. It changes from 5899 to 5900. So we are now in a new year. That is when the year starts in the 7th biblical month. Notice that would be October 2024. And the same process and cycle will continue. The 8th Hebraic month all the way through to the 12th Hebraic month, equating in March 2025, would be still the 5900 Hebraic year. And then after the 12th Hebraic month is complete, the months are reset on the first day of the first biblical month, which would then be the same year, 5900. So the months reset after 12 months are complete, but the years start or change in the 7th biblical month. I hope that makes some sense, because that is the way the Most High's calendar is set. And in effect, what the two caveats are is that the feast season, which is in Passover, the feast season begins in the first biblical month, but the year, the biblical year, is 6 months later in the 7th biblical month. And that's why he said, this is the beginning of months for you. It shall be the first month of the year, because he was talking about the instructions for the feast. They always start in the first biblical month, which we equate to April. But in the 7th biblical month, the Feast of Trumpets on a normal year, or on the Day of Atonement in a Jubilee year, which is on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, that is when the year changes. That is when the new year begins. And that's why some of these Ish people have this confusion where they have 2 days, two periods where they have a new year. And they will say, yeah, it's during Rosh Hashanah and it's also during Passover. But technically speaking, there is only one new year, which starts in the 7th biblical month. The first biblical month is just the start of the new feast season, because we know that the feast season starts in April, or as we equate it to Passover in the first biblical month. So if we have got that understanding, and you may need to go back and play this again and visualize how it works, but if we have got that understanding, we will see that if this is a Jubilee year, 2024, the actual Jubilee hasn't started yet, because the Jubilee will not start until the Day of Atonement, which is the 10th day of the 7th biblical month. So although in the Gregorian sense, the Jubilee year will be this year, if it is 2024, it will not be until the 7th biblical month on the Day of Atonement, which is still in 2024. Do you see how the correlation of the Most High's calendar works? If we're in a Jubilee year in 2024, it has not begun yet. It will be on the 10th day of the 7th biblical month. So now hopefully we've got that understanding. And if we have, we can now understand that the second Exodus is a two-part process, and answer this question: if it is a two-part process, when do both parts take place? And so I'm going to play you a clip of a timeline that was put on another video, which shows, or where I talk about, the gathering being a two-part process. It's a short clip. I'll play it, then I'll come back and we'll expound more. And after that, you will have the gathering of the Most High's people. It's a process that will happen. It won't happen overnight. It will be a period of time that will take place. And after the gathering, then you will see almost at the same time the revelation of this anti-Messiah who will begin his reign on this earth. And whilst he begins his reign on this earth, the two witnesses of the Most High will step forward to begin their ministry, starting at the same time. And at the same time, those who have been gathered, because the gathering is almost a two-process thing. One is to gather everyone together in the same vicinity. Right now, everyone is scattered in the four corners of the earth. So the first part of the gathering is to bring people together. Then the second part of the gathering is to take people into the wilderness. So these three things will happen at the same time. The two witnesses starting their ministry, the anti-Messiah beginning his reign on earth, and the gathering from the one place into the wilderness via the angels will take place at the same time and will be for the same time. 1260 days, 42 months, or a times time and half a time, which is also 1260 days. So we've seen that timeline of the second Exodus being a two-part process. And now let's talk about it a bit more so we can get this understanding. Now we know from the patterns in scriptures of the past and even some of the removed texts found in the apocryphal sources, we know that the second Exodus starts at Passover. So the process of the second Exodus during the Jubilee year, if we are in that Jubilee year, has started at Passover. Now, many of you might look and say, well, how can that be possible? Because Passover has come and gone and I'm still in my place of captivity and I haven't seen any gathering and I haven't seen any things that indicate that the gathering has begun. But from past experiences in biblical sense, the first Exodus of Moshe, the spiritual Exodus of Messiah, these things all took place on the 14th day of the first biblical month. So it is proof that we know that this is when the Most High performs his Exodus, and therefore we can be assured that the patterns of the past will be repeated in the future. And also, as I say, in some of the apocryphal sources, if you do your research, you'll find that scriptures have been removed and obviously not canonized, which shows that Passover actually does take place during the Exodus or the second Exodus for the gathering, i.e. the future event. But how can this be when we're still in our captivity? How is this two-process event? How does it work for both to be true? Because the second thing which we now have also understood is that from scripture, we can see that the Day of Atonement is what signals the first day of a Jubilee year. And we've seen in that scripture in Leviticus 25 that on that very day, the start of the Jubilee year, on the Day of Atonement, in the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, every man must be returned to his family and every man must have his possessions returned to him. So that is the day of liberty, as it says in Leviticus 25. And if that be the day of liberty, then that has to be the second part of the second Exodus process, that would be the day we would have to enter the wilderness, because then we will be free. Then we will be under the Most High's care, as in, day out. Then we will be under his covenant, and that will be the signaling of the Jubilee and also the freedom of Yasharal. So let me explain why the second Exodus is a two-part process with regards to the gathering of Yasharal. Now, during the first Exodus, as you know, the children of Yasharal were in one place. They were all in captivity in Mitzrayim or Egypt. And so when they left on the 14th day of the first biblical month at night, they all left together because they were all in the same location. The second Exodus, however, the children of Yasharal are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. We are everywhere. And so we can't all leave at the same time. We can't all make our Exodus to the same place at the same time because we're not in the same location. And that is why the second Exodus will be in two parts, where the first part of the Exodus will be the children of Yasharal to all gather to the same place, the same continent, the same area. It doesn't necessarily mean the exact same place, but it would be in the same continent that we would all gather, to likely be in Africa's continent. And once the gathering process has taken place, and again, this will be a process that takes place over the course of 5 to 6 months, then on the Day of Atonement, because all the children are gathered in the same continent, as it were the first time for the first Exodus, then the woman will be taken into the wilderness to be gathered as a collective unit in the same place. So there is a logical reason why the second Exodus has to be in two parts, because we are not all together, as it were, in the first Exodus. And also, in addition to that, the number of people are far greater in the second Exodus than it will be in the first Exodus. The first Exodus talks about 600,000 men, plus women and children, plus a few from a mixed multitude, i.e. the Gentiles that cleaved onto Yasharal, all left together to go for the first Exodus. But in the second Exodus, the numbers will be far greater than that. The numbers of Yasharal scattered all across the world, and plus women and children, and including the few strangers or the few Gentiles which also have cleaved onto Yasharal that will be coming in that Exodus. So that is the reason why it will be in two parts during this Exodus, and it will take time to perform. And the first part of the Exodus is for the children to make their way as they are led by the Most High individually, not collectively, individually, to the place of gathering. And then as all the children make their way, and some may remain behind because of their situation and circumstance, but the Most High knows the way he will get them to that place, those who qualify. So there's no need to panic, because the Most High will speak to you individually and tell you what you need to do in regards to leaving or waiting on him. So the two-part process is, first, all the children will make their way from wherever they are and find a place in the continent of Africa, wherever that may be, wherever the Most High leads you. And once this process has been complete, on the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th biblical month of a jubilee year, all the children who have been gathered in the same continent will be joined together and taken into the wilderness via the angels, because they're the only ones that know the journey, how to get to the wilderness. And that is when that day will become the day of liberty, when all the children are in the same place at the same time. So as you've seen from that clip, the Most High can give us collective, and he can also give us individual instruction. And so a collective instruction has not been given or has not been made for us to begin the process of the gathering. The Most High hasn't made any action that takes the children of Yasharal out of their place of captivity and brings them into whichever place he's leading us. That hasn't happened collectively. But have we individually been inspired to begin this journey? This is what we're going to look at. How do we know if the Most High is inspiring us to leave Babylon from an individual basis and it is not our own thoughts? We know collectively he's not telling us all to leave Babylon, because if he was telling us collectively to leave, then we would have the signs, we would have the signals, we would have the collective understanding that we all need to leave. We don't have that. But is he individually giving us that understanding that we need to leave? And when I say individually, I don't mean every individual, because as already mentioned in the clip, the Most High can give me an instruction that he may not give you. So we now need to see, is he giving us individual instructions? And some of the things that have been happening since the total solar eclipse and since Passover is that some groups of individuals have had enough, and they have said, you know what, I'm packing up and I'm leaving and I'm going to some place in Africa, wherever that may be. Let me play you another short clip of a video I did titled Should I Leave Babylon, where I talk about the Most High's instruction on an individual basis versus a collective basis, so we can understand that there is a process that the Most High uses in terms of communicating with his people. I'll show you this clip and I'll come right back. Now, what I will say is that there are two answers to the question. And in order to get to those answers, we have to remember the principles that we have discussed in previous videos. The two principles are that The Most High is in the heavens and he does as he pleases, as it says in Psalms 115. So he has the ability and authority and power to do so whatever so he chooses. He can give you a message that is specifically for you, or he can give a message that is specifically for the body. The Most High has this power. And as I said on previous videos and many times in the past, we can't put him into a box. That being said, the second principle we have to know is that the thing of the past is going to be the thing of the future. Ecclesiastes 1 and 9, that what has been is what shall be. There is no new thing under the sun. So with regards to that, we need to look into the past to see how the Most High operated in the past, and then we will be able to understand how he will operate in the future. So these are important principles to establish. And I want to address this topic with a bit of sensitivity for the reason that the Most High has a relationship with all his believers on an individual basis. So something he may call me to do, he may not necessarily call you to do. And for that reason, the answer whether you should flee or not is down to your personal relationship with the Most High. He doesn't tell everybody to do the same thing. So on that basis, if you have a relationship with him and he speaks to you and tells you to do something, then you better do it. But here we are looking at the body of believers. We are looking at collective Yasharel. So there are two answers to this. There's the individual answer that he's given you, the individual instruction that he's given you, and you must know what that is and act upon it. Then you also have the collective instruction, what he's given collectively to the body of Yasharel. And that is what I want to focus on more. Should we flee from Babylon? We've seen over the years, many people have left their places of captivity, be it the United States of America, be it other European countries, be it the United Kingdom, wherever they are, and people have migrated or immigrated and gone to Africa. And some have gone to Africa, I suppose some have gone to other places or other continents, but quite a lot of people have relocated somewhere in Africa. Now, for the vast majority of those people, they have just made that decision within themselves. They have chosen to go there and they've chosen to set up for a better life, for a life not oppressed by the oppressors. But there are some people that have openly said the reason why they chose to go to Africa is because the Most High inspired them to go over there. And some have even gone further and said it's because they were told to go over there and to prepare things for the second Exodus. And as I say, this is not a recent thing. Some of these things have happened years ago. But the question is today, is since Passover has taken place, is the Most High inspiring more and more people to make that journey? Again, on an individual or a family basis, not collectively as Yasharal. So we're going to look at some things which are now going to show us if the Most High is inspiring us individually or by a family basis to leave Babylon, or if it's our own thoughts in our head and it's not actually the Most High calling us. Let's see some of these things. Now, is your desire to leave Babylon motivated by fear, i.e. fear of a incoming war, World War III, fear of the economy collapsing and all the dramas and troubles and challenges that will cause, or fear of another pandemic with diseases that could be lethal, that could kill or destroy or whatever it is? Is your desire to leave this place motivated by any of those things or any other thing that may not be covered? Well, 2 Timothy 1 and 7 says that Yah does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And 1 John 4:18 says that perfect love casts out fear. We know that Yah's love is perfect. And so therefore, where Yah's love exists, fear should not be present because fear should be cast out. And Proverbs 29 and 25 says that the fear of a man, is a snare. But those who trust in the Most High will be kept safe. Sorry, I'm reading these scriptures or reciting them off memory. But basically, all these scriptures relate to fear. And we know that fear is not from the Most High. So if your desire to leave Babylon is motivated by fear for the various things already discussed and others that may be in your mind, then that is not of the Most High. That's not what he's calling you to do if your desire to leave is because you're fearful of what may be to come. And some of our brethren, some of our brothers and sisters that have left over the past have been because of those reasons. And if they were because of those reasons, then it was not the Most High telling them to leave, but rather their own thoughts or their own free will that made that decision to go. Now, is your desire to leave Babylon motivated by the want to escape your individual circumstance? Now, we know that all of us scattered across the four corners of the world live in various situations, in various predicaments, that some may be of our own doing and some may just be because life has happened. And we are fed up of those predicaments. We're fed up of that situation. And therefore, we just want to leave Babylon and enter into a place where the Most High sanctifies us and takes care of us. If that is your key motivation, if that is what is really wanting you to leave Babylon, then we have to look at the scripture, which shows us if our predicament is in such a case that we don't like it anymore. It shows us what we should do. I'm actually going to read this in scripture, and we find this in 1 Peter chapter 5 verses 8 through to 11, where it reads, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the Allah of grace, who has called us unto the eternal glory by Hamashiach Yahusha, after that ye have suffered a while, makes you perfect, establishes you, strengthens you, and settles you. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. So be it." So we see in effect that we are being told to be sober and vigilant because of the adversary, the devil, who's walking like a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour. And we are told we should resist, be steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are going on with our brothers and sisters throughout the world. We all have problems. We all have situations. And it tells us that the Allah or the Elohim of all grace, who has called us unto eternal glory by his beautiful Son, it shows us that after we've suffered for a while, it will make us perfect, establish us and strengthen us and settle us. So what this is saying in effect is that if we are in a situation that is not to our liking, that after we have endured for a while, as the scripture says, the Most High will show us a way out. He will never give us more than we could bear. So if your motivation to leave this place of captivity is because of your individual circumstance, then that is not the Most High calling you to leave, because we should remain in the situation until he shows us a way out. And that all boils down to your desire wanting to leave. Is your desire to do with fear, or is it motivated by escaping your individual circumstances or predicament? That will show us it's not from the Most High. Now, is your desire to leave motivated by living amongst Yah's people and serving him in ruach and truth in accordance with the uncorrupted word and void of the doctrine of men? So does your desire to leave, if you have this desire to leave, is it because primarily you just want to serve the Most High? You just want to be amongst his people where there will be truth and uncorruption of his word and no doctrines of men? Do you want to leave because you want to be in that environment? If you do, as it says in John 8:32, that you will know the truth and the truth will make you free. As it says in John 4:24, that Yah is a Ruach, and anyone that comes to him has to come in Ruach and Amat, or Ruach and truth, spirit and truth. So if this is your motivation, if these things are your motivation, then we have a perfect platform to understand that this could be the Most High inspiring us, because we want to leave this place, not just to escape, not just because we are scared. We want to leave because we want to be with the Most High and his people. That is our primary reason for wanting to leave. Then it is likely that the Most High is inspiring you to take the first step of the process of leaving Babylon. And Psalm 27 and verse 4 says, "One thing I have desired of Yahweh, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of Yahweh all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of Yahweh and inquire in his temple." So this is telling us that this is the one thing I have desired. The one thing that I will seek after is to dwell in the house of Yahweh, to dwell in his presence, which we know that the second Exodus will bring. So if you are motivated by this, if this is your primary reason for wanting to leave Babylon, then it could be that the Most High is giving you an individual instruction to be part of the first process of leaving Babylon, which he would be inspiring you from the Passover season and onwards. And there are people that have said in the last couple of weeks, they've just had this urge to leave. They want to leave, and maybe they haven't had that urge before, or maybe they've had the desire, but it was motivated by wrong things. But now they are just feeling in their ruach, do you know what? I've had enough of this place. I really want to leave. And not because I'm scared, not because I have a situation that I'm living in that I don't like. I just want to be with the Most High and his people. These are things that indicate that we are being called. And then in Psalm chapter 37 and verse 4, it says, "Delight thyself also in Yah, and he shall give thee the desires of your heart." So if you are one who is delighted and rejoices and give thanks and praise to the Most High, then he will put a desire in your heart. He will give you a desire that is of him, and he will complete it. He will give you those things. He will make those things come to pass. So if you know you are somebody that serves Yah in all your heart and loves him and believes in him and wants to be with him, he will put a desire in your heart that he will fulfill. And if that desire in your heart is to leave Babylon, then he may be calling you to the first part of the process, which is to leave, for you to leave. Now, as I said before, this is not for everyone, because this is on an individual, case by case, family by family basis. But we have had some people leave. We've had some families decide to pack up and go. And if they are for this reason, or if they are motivated by wanting to be with the Most High and his people, then that is the instruction he's given them. But it won't be the instruction for every person because of this next thing. Now, is your desire to leave a recent or sudden one that has become pressing in your ruach? This is what I was talking about just a minute ago, where you've just had this feeling of recent that you want to leave and that you want to make or get a way out because you just want to be in Yah's presence. And we know that when we're in captivity in the Western world, we are far from his presence in terms of the world that we're living in, because everything is set up for Hasatan rather than for the glorification of the Most High. So if you've had this recent or sudden or pressing desire in your ruach, then as in the case of all these things, you need to get in front of the Most High and ask him what he's instructing you to do. Now, if you haven't had these things, the likelihood is then he's not instructing you to do them. But if you have had these things, we're going to look at what it says in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 3, where it says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end of it, it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." And so when the Most High gives us a vision, when he gives us a desire, when he gives us a want to do something, it is at an appointed time. It will not be at any time. It will be a time that he has appointed. And at the end of that time, when that time has passed, the Most High does not lie. And though it might seem like it is taking a long time, just wait for it, because surely it will come to pass, because the Most High is not a liar, and it will not delay, meaning it will always happen at its appointed time. The Most High will always give you the instruction at its right time, not too early, not too late. So he gives you first the desire to do something. And once you have the desire, then he gives you the opportunity. He makes the way open up for you. And then he gives you the means or the tools. He gives you the way to accomplish that thing that he has made your desire. So if you have a recent or sudden want to leave Babylon, could that be the Most High giving you that desire? And if he's giving you that desire, do you have the opportunity? Is it possible for you to do? Is it something that's within your power? And therefore, do you have the means? Do you have the tools, whether that be financially, whether that be in the form of legally, passport, visa, all these things? Do you have the tools to be able to fulfill that desire? Do you have the opportunity? If you have all those things and have the desire, which is the key thing, motivated by wanting to be with the Most High and his people, then the likelihood is he's calling you to make that transition. And only you can know the answer to these questions by getting in front of the Most High, because it is on an individual basis. Collectively, i.e. the body of Yasharal, I don't believe he's telling them to leave. He's telling us to leave collectively, because if he was, the signs, the signals, the revelation would be there and people would have left. The Most High is not late on his promises. But individually speaking, it seems that since the first Exodus, that the Most High has brought us now to the brink of the second Exodus, and people are leaving, or people have left prior and people are leaving now, and going forward, more and more people will be having these desires on an individual basis. And if your circumstance doesn't allow you to leave for whatever that is, whether it be for financial reasons, whether it be for legal reasons, there are many situations. Somebody might be in prison. They can't leave because they're in prison. Somebody might not have the money. Somebody might be old and disabled or elderly and not have any support to make this transition. There are all sorts of situations and circumstances that individually we have, which means we won't be able to make this transition unless the Most High makes a way. If you find yourself in one of those positions, the likelihood is the Most High hasn't set your appointed time yet. But if 2024 is a jubilee year, come the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, the people called to the second Exodus must enter the wilderness. So there is still time between now and that point where things may change. The Most High may change your situation. He may create the desire. He may create the opportunity, and he may give you the means. These are things that still has time to go. But you have to get in your prayer closet. You have to get in front of the Most High and see what he is telling you as an individual. I'm stressing again, collectively, as seen in the Should I Leave Babylon video. I'll leave the link in the description. The Most High is not collectively telling everybody to do that, but individually, for his own reasons, has he started the process from Passover of inspiring and giving people the desire to leave and creating the opportunity and giving them the means. You have to ask him that for yourself. So I hope you understand that part of the presentation and the Most High's instructions on an individual basis. And if you do your own research, if you look around, if you speak to people, if you look at some of the things that are out there, you will find that there are people that have made either sudden decisions or maybe they've been gradual, but they have made these decisions that they have had enough and they are leaving and have gone to wherever they're going. Now, undoubtedly, some of those people, it's just their own will, it's just their own thoughts and their own mind. But also, I believe amongst those people, there will be certain individuals or certain families that have been inspired to leave from the Most High. And that is because Passover season, if we're in this Jubilee year, has taken place. And that Passover is the first part of the gathering. So there has to be a quickening. There has to be an atmosphere that many people are making this decision. And if we're seeing that, then it is a clue that indicates that we are still in the season and the process has begun. Like I said, two-part process that we have seen has to start at Passover, but has to also be complete 6 months later on the Day of Atonement. So what happens during and then after the second Exodus into the wilderness? The wilderness experience is an experience indicated in scripture that will be for 1,260 days or 3.5 years. Spending that time in the wilderness, what will be happening? During the second Exodus into the wilderness will be like training. And that training will include purging, sanctification, restoration, and education. The purging will be the purging of the rebels and the transgressors, those not willing to submit to the Most High and his instructions. Read Ezekiel 20 and 38. The sanctification process will be by passing under the rod and being brought under the bond of the covenant. In other words, to have this commitment to this Most High, this agreement that you are going to fall in line and follow what he has said and instructed. And as it says in the scripture, he will plead with us face to face via his son. He will plead with us face to face about this bond of the covenant and about being brought under the rod. You find that in Ezekiel 20 verse 37. And the restoration of all things in accordance with the Torah, found in Acts 3 and 21, that all things now, according to the law, according to the things written in the Torah, the Tanakh, all these things have to be restored. The Most High is going to educate us, going to give us a bigger portion of the Ruach HaKodesh, which will enable us to keep his laws, statutes, and commands. So the restoration of all these things will be during the wilderness. This is like a training process to purge out not only the rebels and the transgressors, but also within all of us, the Babylonian ways and systems that we have. He's going to get rid of those things because those things are contrary to his way. They are not of him. So the restoration of all things will take place in the wilderness during these 1,260 days. And then the education of the undiluted truth and the ways of Yah, the things that we know are of Yah, we will understand. We will not have the doctrines of men. We will not have the things that have been given to us by Babylon and given to us by Hasatan. We will not have all these things that are contrary to the Most High, whether it be to do with the food and dietary requirements, whether it be to do with the holy days and how to keep them, the Shabbats and how to keep them, all the things that we are striving for if we're in the Most High. We will have the full education, and that education will be undiluted truth. It will be the truth of the Most High, not with any other things from man. And that's what we will learn during that time period. And the scripture references for that is John 8:32, Jeremiah 23 and 4, and Romans 12 and 2, where it tells us that we need to renew our minds and be transformed. Those are the things that the education process will do. So these things all will happen during the second Exodus into the wilderness, or during the wilderness experience of 1,260 days. And then after that training, after all that understanding has been given, after all that sanctification, and after all that purging of the rebels and transgressors and also the Babylonian systems in us, we now become ready after 3.5 years to leave the wilderness and go into the promised land, the land that the Most High promised to Abraham and his descendants. So 1260 days of training from the Day of Atonement on the Jubilee year takes us to Passover 3.5 years later. So if we calculate from the Day of Atonement, 3.5 years later takes us to Passover of that year in 3.5 years time. And so that would be the time that we would enter into the promised land. Now we know Passover and Exodus are synonymous. It's two things that happen at the same time. You Passover first and then Exodus. So it makes sense that after 1260 days, it would end up being Passover, because that would be the time we would finish training and leave, like an Exodus, from the wilderness into the promised land. And at the same time, after the 1260-day ministry, the two witnesses would be killed. So they would be killed at the same time of Passover in that future time, which would be something that is a parallel of Hamashiach, who was also crucified, as we know, at Passover and resurrected 3 days later. And this is why the two witnesses will also resurrect 3.5 days later. See Revelation 11 and 11. So all these things show us that according to the timeline, entering the wilderness, being there purged and being there sanctified and restored and educated for 1260 days would take us from the Day of Atonement to Passover 3.5 years later. And then at Passover 3.5 years later, the two witnesses would have finished their ministry, which is also 3.5 years, and will be killed, as it says in Revelation 11:11, at Passover. They will be killed at that point. And then it tells us that after 3.5 days later, similar to Messiah, who was 3 days and 3 nights later, they will resurrect and ascend into the Shamayim. So in terms of how these things correlate, they all fit in order. And they all point to things that will be fulfilled in the Jubilee year. The question is 2024 a Jubilee year? By Yah's grace, it is. So the only other thing to discuss or left to discuss is miscellaneous item, which are other events that need to take place. The darkness. Now, many of us, myself included, believe that the darkness would take place before the second exodus into the land, or before we leave. And that may still be the case. The only thing is, it doesn't take place in the first part of the Exodus. But will it take place in the second part of the Exodus before we enter into the wilderness? Now, Amos 8, 9 and 10, chapter 8 verses 9 and 10 still is yet to be fulfilled, and we know all things must be fulfilled, and that must coincide with Revelation 12, 7 and 9, when Hasatan is kicked out of the Shamayim and cast onto earth, which brings the darkness. That still is yet to happen, and also seen in Revelation 12 verses 12 through to 13. So the Most High scriptures have to be fulfilled, and the scriptures indicate a period of darkness in the earth, and those things haven't happened yet. But are they going to take place before the children enter the wilderness? It seems, according to scripture, that that is the case, because Hasatan is kicked out of heaven and persecutes the woman into the wilderness until she enters the wilderness. So when Hasatan is kicked out of heaven, believe that will cause darkness. Believe that. And if that be the case, which it will be the case, then that event is still something that has to take place. But it is obvious it is not part of the first part of the gathering. and Isaiah chapter 60 verses 1 and 2 also relate to the darkness and appear to be around that same time of going into the wilderness, because it is Yah's people who have the light in them. The light shines in them and shines in gross darkness. So maybe the darkness happens in a way we haven't seen before, but the darkness still comes for the rest of the world, the rest of the earth. We have to wait to find out. So we have come to the end of the teaching or presentation, and I hope you have found it edifying. I hope it has given you instruction and understanding of what you are to do. And the first point of call has to be to seek out the Most High and see what his instruction is for you individually. If we are in the Jubilee year, if 2024 is a Jubilee year, the Jubilee year starts on the Day of Atonement, the 10th day of the 7th biblical month, in roughly about 5 months' time, because we are now in May 2024. So at some point in October 2024, if this is a Jubilee year, the Day of Atonement on the 10th day will signal the entering or into the wilderness of the Most High's people. That is the second part of the Exodus process. The first part may have begun if we're in that Jubilee year. And the only way to know that, as indicated on the presentation, is to answer those 4 questions. If you answer the first 2 with the answer no, and the last 2 with the answer yes, it is likely the Most High is calling you to begin your Exodus. You need to get in front of his prayer closet and find out if he is telling you to do this and act accordingly. I will leave it here. I hope this has brought you some peace. Please do share, like and subscribe as you are led. And to all those that are his, may the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance upon you, and may he give you shalom.